All right. Great. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today for the Home Services Summit broadcast. We're doing a webinar here. I'm your host and founder of 5-Star Painting and CEO of ProNexis. Our mission at ProNexis is to transform the home services customer experience through voice chat, online scheduling, and text. And today I have with me three awesome guests who are pros when it comes to how to sell franchises using brokers. So I'll welcome them all real quick. I have Adam Winnett here, the friend dev manager at OE2 Brands and Wow One Day Painting. Adam, you want to say hi?
Hey, happy to be here. Thanks.
Great to have you. And I got Red Boswell, the Boz man, president IFPG. Yeah.
Honored to be here. Thanks for hooking me up, Scott. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And we've got Mike Hopkins, Senior COO at Paul Davis Restoration.
Thanks, Scott. Happy to be here.
So before we get into what we all want to talk about, which is franchise sales, I've got a few housekeeping items. A reminder that 1 month from today is our first annual Home Services Summit. We've got some great speakers lined up to talk to you about all kinds of aspects of how to grow your home service brand. We have the CEO Whisper, Cameron Harold, who will be speaking to us and kicking us off. And it's going to be just an awesome experience, 2 days on the 4th and 5th of February with, I think it's 6 sessions each day. So we look forward to seeing you all there. So with that, let's jump right into the format we're doing today, as well as the topic. So we'll take 45 minutes right now to just do some conversation around franchise sales. We'll take 15 minutes at the end, where if you are tuned in through YouTube, you'll notice on the right-hand side, there's a comment section. You can go ahead and ask any question you have for the panel in those comments. They'll stay there, and we'll pull them in for the last 15 minutes to have the panelists go ahead and answer them for us. So before we start, let's go ahead and start with you, Red. Why don't you go ahead and make the case for why a home service brand should be using brokers as a means of growing and expanding their network?
It's an easy one, Scott. Thank you. Teed it up with a little softball there. Time, money, hassle. I mean, if you look at boy, am I purple on that screen? I look like a Oompa Loompa. Anyway, maybe I am purple. Could use a tan here in the winter. So if you look at every category of franchising, the number one category that uses consultants, referral consultants, brokers, matchmakers, coaches, mentors, whatever you want to call us, is the home services category. I was a home service franchisor myself 20 years ago. And so I got to know that category, love that category very, very much. Every category uses us, every category can benefit, but the home service category especially loves brokers. Time. The FranDev team has limited time. They have limited money. We all have a limited budget and certainly don't like hassles. Well, as a FranDev rep for about a decade myself, I really got tired of calling literally hundreds and hundreds of portal leads, SEO generated leads, maybe LinkedIn leads, all these leads that were not vetted, didn't know much at all about my brand, on and on and on, certainly didn't have money most of the time. And it was just a hassle. I would find drudgery in my day and not looking forward to it. And well, the consultants do all that hassle for the franchisors. They lay it up, qualify them, educate them, inform them, match them, and kind of tee them up for that ZOR to actually enjoy the process. And instead of closing 1 in 1,000, you're awarding 1 out of maybe 10. So it's a different world when you're working with consultants. Less financial risk is a big part of it too. Probably the number one reason for a lot of ZORs, a whole lot less financial risk. Instead of spending $20,000 on marketing to hopefully close 1 deal, you're spending a few hundred or maybe a couple thousand in membership, in conferences, and a little bit of fun time marketing your model to the consultants rather than the world, and ultimately paying a nice success fee after you've been paid. So paying some money out of that franchise fee. It's a lot, helps a lot of ZORs sleep a lot better at night, knowing that they're not risking a whole tens of thousands of dollars to get to a deal, rather tens of maybe hundreds of dollars to get to a deal.
Really well said. Yeah, it's really well said, Red. Thank you. And I can maybe speak to just from personal experience. When we launched 5-Star Painting, we sold almost all of our franchises off of networking, friends and family, SEO, And it was hard for us at the very beginning to digest this idea that we should give $20,000 or $25,000 or $30,000 of our franchise fee to a broker to bring someone in when we were getting 100% before. But the reality is that it was stymieing our growth. We did not grow as fast those first few years when we didn't leverage a broker network. So that said, I know when we launched with brokers, it transformed our business in terms of how fast we could grow. But there's tips and tricks I know we can learn from each other on this. So what I'll do is maybe go to maybe Mike first on this. Mike, what are you doing that's working in growing your franchise sales with brokers?
Yeah, Red, that was a great kickoff. I would echo everything that you just said there. We're really excited and appreciate our broker consultants, mentors. You named a lot of those that help us along. And the big thing that's helped us to grow that is to make sure that our relationships with them are personal. And so what I mean by that is that we know our broker network very well personally, and they know us very well personally, and also understand what the offer is that Paul Davis Restoration has for a potential franchise candidate. And they also, with that, then gives us a chance to really dig in and make sure that they know, hey, what are we about? Who are we looking for from an experience standpoint, from a capitalization standpoint, to make sure it's a great fit both for Paul Davis and for the potential franchisee. So we've just found it to be very important, and it really just comes down to individual time getting to know our broker friends that we work with.
Let's dig in that just a little bit, Mike. What are some of the things you do to establish that relationship with them? Are you doing events with them? Or are you doing personal calls? Let us know what that is.
A bit of both of those. So whenever there's events to get involved with, our team gets very involved with those. So whether that's conferences, regional meetings, meet and greets, networking events, we participate in all those things. Red's a big help with that with his crew. In addition to that, there is loads and loads of phone calls, even down to when someone calls just to do or checks in just to do a territory check. Our team will actually usually phone them and say, hey, we may or may not have that territory available, but what do you actually know about Paul Davis? Do you have just a few minutes to chat about that? And so that introduction leads to a longer conversation. And often our folks are checking in, with their friends that are brokers on a very regular basis, but also are reviewing what's new with us. So that may be, hey, here's some new deals that went down and, that happened that we're really excited about. Here's some territories that are available or a resale that's coming up that you might want to know about. So we just stay in touch.
Awesome. That's great, Mike. Adam, do you want to add on to that?
Sure. Yeah. And I think Mike's bang on. The name of the game is relationships. So that doesn't just happen overnight, as everyone knows. Red knows, Mike knows, so it is a consistency. I think something that's really helped us that I would recommend is having a system in place when you're working with brokers. So something we use is an activity tracker. We're tracking what events are we attending, when are we sending content, webinars, phone calls, just having a system in place so we know that connection with brokers, that relationship building is happening consistently, and that we're on top of it. And it's not just, whoopsie, it's been 2 or 3 months since we've connected with a certain person, and focusing that a little bit too. There are hundreds and hundreds of brokers and consultants out there, and you can't also spread your time evenly among everybody. We're not on everyone's radar the same way. So we are hyper-focused of usually having kind of like a top 50 list of people that we're just seeing the most consistency with. And then I would just layer onto that, it's knowing your audience. Just like you're speaking with candidates, similar way. Candidates want to communicate differently. They're looking for different things. Different things will help them. It's the same approach we have with brokers. Some want phone calls. Some like emails. Some like text messages. Some love video chat. Some don't. And so when we're, as Mike pointed out, when we're talking about content, we're talking about, is this an update for them? Is it a video for them? Is it an article for them? Is it a phone call for them? Is it a webinar for them? The question we're asking every time, and I recommend this as well, is what value is this giving a coach or a broker? It's not just what do I want to talk about or what's important to me right now. It's not about me. It's about the broker or the consultant. So if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to give them something, send them something, speak to them about something, how is it moving the needle? How is it going to help them know more about Wow One Day Painting? How is it going to help them present Wow One Day Painting? How is it going to help them connect with what we're doing? And that's all part of that relationship building piece.
I love that. In fact, maybe I can just share something that we did at 5-Star, and we still do this today. We thought along those same lines. It's all about relationships and knowing people really well, making connection and educating them about your brand. And so we flew in, and we see there's 7 or 8 of the top brokers of a network we were working with to Salt Lake City, brought them down for a discovery day with a bunch of candidates at our office. And then we took the next day and took them down to Moab and did a whitewater rafting trip with them for a day, had lunch, shared a great experience, and connected and made some friendships in that process. And that worked really, really well with us to, make those connections. And they still are great partners of ours in selling our bathroom concept. Red, any tips or tricks you want to give to us on how to connect best with your brands?
Well, Scott, you don't even need me, brother. Adam and Mike are killing it here. They said it, relationships. How do you get somebody to fall in love with you? There's no silver bullet. It's time. They got to know you, like you, trust you. Emails. They said it so well. Just know. I guess some brands that get a little frustrated. We're 2 months in. We don't have any deals. We're not getting Well, did you get married in 2 weeks? I mean, maybe some of you did, and maybe you got lucky on that deal. But it is when I was a decade ago, when I started working with consultants as a FranDev rep, I laughed at the Zor when he told me he worked with brokers. I said, I don't need them. I'm a marketer. I know how to get this done without those guys. But they already had some relationships. I started taking the leads, fell in love with them. Now, they had done like one deal a year. So they were really not doing much of anything. Year one, I did about 12. Year two, about 24. Year three, about 48. So I was doubling each year with the same budget. How was I doing that? Relationships with the brokers. 95% of my deals were with the brokers. I had fallen in love with them in kind of a 180 from thinking they were a joke and an expensive hassle to, man, I don't want to do anything else but them.
Yeah, they're great partners for sure. In fact, let's touch on something you just said there. What should a brand expect in terms of how long it takes for them to develop a relationship with a network to start seeing some results? Because like you mentioned, Red, and was mentioned before, it takes some time for that to happen. It's not made overnight. What should a brand expect? Maybe I'll go to, can I go to you, Adam, first, then come to Red afterwards?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think sort of two things. I would answer that probably two ways. The first, in terms of expectation, would be, and Red was bang on, the front end of it takes time, right? And it can feel a bit like you're doing a lot of stuff on your end and you're not sure if you're getting the connection or if people are soaking you up or registering you. And you also have to recognize that there's probably brands in that network that are somewhat similar to you potentially. And so it's how are you standing out and differentiating and building trust? That was a great word that Red used. So on the expectation piece, I would say first expectation piece is you're looking for brokers to be connecting with you. You're looking for territory checks. You're looking for them to have conversation with you, just starting that education process. If that's happening, you're doing the right thing. Not, I've been in this for a month, how come I don't have any deals? Again, that would be amazing. Probably not realistic. But if you're starting to get on the phone or do webinars or have video chats, you're starting to get territory checks. These are all good indications that you're making the right connections. You're educating people about your brand. They're curious. They're starting to trust you. They're likely showing you. And then from there, I think you can start actually mapping out, all right, now that we're seeing this happen, we're expecting to start seeing some traction from that. But if that front end is even happening and you're not doing that work on your end as a Zor, you're not putting in that time just to expect deals to fall because you signed up from a group, it's a little bit foolish probably.
Yeah, I love that. That's really well said. Red, what do you think? How much time should a brand expect before they start seeing some traction? If they're making the right investments, like Mike and Adam have laid out, they're building relationships, they're doing those things, what should they expect?
I'll hit this from a different angle and give a little education piece to it. There's the science and the art of it. When you're buying a house and you're working with the realtor, how do you get that house sold quickly? You get all the information needed so that consultant, when they're selling a franchise or selling the opportunities, they first get a lot of information, just like your realtor gets a lot of information about what do you want. 2-bedroom, 3-bath, 2-car garage, swimming pool, this big lot, this neighborhood, all the information. We do the same thing. So the science of it's pretty simple. We enter that science into our system and it narrows it down from hundreds down to maybe dozens of opportunities that match on paper. Then the art kicks in. The art is what I know about the brand, the FranDev rep, and the commission. They're going to look at everything that they can about the brand. Is it a good match? They're going to say, do I know and like and trust that FranDev rep? If not, I'm going to watch their video about them. I'm going to look them up on LinkedIn. I'm going to maybe call them and see, is this somebody I would trust my baby with? This is blood, sweat, and tears I've invested to get this awesome buyer to this stage, I sure as heck am not going to turn them over to somebody that's going to embarrass me or scare them out of franchising. So it's knowing the fran dev rep. A lot of Zords don't realize how important that fran dev rep is to the consultant, not just the buyer, but the consultant really cares about the fran dev rep. And guess what? We're humans, at least 90% of the consultants are. And so they'll look at commission. So you want to make a big splash quick, get in front of them a lot, often with great content, great information, sell yourself, sell your brand, and certainly the commission helps you to sell yourself and your brand also. So it's like baking a cake, lots of ingredients, not one silver bullet. You do it all consistently, you will have success.
I think some of the experience we've seen is it usually takes, when we launch a brand new network, it takes us, we'll sell 1 or 2 in that network the very first year. So at least our experience has been, we're not selling 5 or 10 units the first year. It's the second year and the third year that starts to grow, as has been mentioned, developing relationships. And I think what Red pointed out is really important. The brokers want to know you can close someone that they bring to you that's highly qualified. And if you're not, then of course you're going to see that volume kind of slow down a little bit. So maybe let's just jump into some numbers. I'd love to hear from, maybe from you, Mike, first, then maybe Adam after, around what kind of KPIs you're using to manage. And if you don't want to get too specific, that's fine. We get some round numbers that you'd be using to manage the network of brokers.
Yeah, when you look at first and foremost, I would say, Red is all over this. When you look at, they're looking at the brand, you're looking at the rep, you're looking at the commission, right? So just as they're looking, our friends that are our brokers are looking at that, we're looking at who is bringing us enough territory checks, enough qualified candidates, and then also when we look at the qualified candidate, how do they fit? And so Red was pretty spot on there with us. When you're looking at about 1 in 10, our investment is fairly high. Our businesses are very large, and so it's a pretty specialized owner. And we need to be sure that our brokers understand that level of that caliber of candidate. Not that anyone at any other franchise it's great. It's got to be a great fit for your organization. And for us, that 1 in 10 is about right. And we really, if we do find, this is one of the key things, and it already came up, was if we notice that maybe the candidates aren't quite the right fit, then we are having phone calls with our broker or consultant and saying, hey, really neat person, not quite the fit we're looking for. Here's a couple things that we're looking for that might be different in their qualifications, experience, or capitalization that might bring more qualified candidates. So there's a lot of feedback going back and forth. But from a KPI perspective, that's about right on that Red brought up earlier on the call.
That's great. Adam, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, sure. There's a whole bunch of things we track for sure. And obviously the end goal of deals is important. I would say 2 things that we look at to get a pulse on, this is piggybacking what Mike was saying, but just getting a pulse on a group specifically, but also just individual brokers. And going back to that comment I made about having like a top 50 list. So the first thing we look at is territory checks to leads. And for us, again, we're starting at, if someone's not doing any territory checks, or a group's not doing any, or a person, you're not really on their radar. So we're looking at territory checks, but at the same time, just because someone's doing territory checks, if there's no leads coming from that, the question is, what's going on there? Are they not actually presenting you? Are they presenting you incorrectly? Are they not confident presenting you? Did they not have the right information? So honestly, when we look at that, we're probably looking, if something is showing up from a territory check to lead for us, under 20%, that's a bit of concern that maybe there's something we can help with. So as Mike said, get on the phone. Let's talk to said broker or consultant. Hey, you've been doing a bunch of territory checks. We're not necessarily seeing leads from that. Can I help you? Is it content you need? Is it information? Is it talking through something? So that's the first major piece we just look at for awareness. And then the second piece we look at is, I would love to say that every lead sent to us by a consultant or broker is perfect, the right fit, communicative. It's just not true. We get some duds as well from brokers, unfortunately. The wrong fit, people that are just completely unresponsive, that happens. So what we look at is when someone is sent to us as a lead, but we actually engage with them, talk to them, and they are potentially the right fit, we call that an opportunity. That's just the word we use internally. So then we look at from opportunities to deal closed, meaning for people, brokers bringing us the right people, they want to have a conversation, they could be the right fit, lots of work to do. How many of those actually turn into a franchisee? And then, yeah, same figures you're sharing there. But it's for us more about when we have the right person, are those people moving forward? And again, if it's not the right opportunity, then we got to get on the phone, and it's all about that relationship building all over again. But those are the two big metrics we look at, again, by group and by people. And just a not so subtle plug for Red, but IFPG for us led in both categories this year.
They are fantastic. In fact, I'm really glad you just shared that, Adam, because, and this is a takeaway for me that I just pulled from that. We've always at 5 Star been looking at, how many leads are coming in and how many of those leads go to discovery day and are closing, and trying to track that momentum and then know that our investment's working. And I think on a prior one of these calls, we had Keith Gerson on, who pulled some data from FranConnect, and he grabbed, from his solution, from all brands that use FranConnect in home services, all the networks and how many leads are coming through and how many of those are closing. And he said, I think it was 6.6% or roughly that IFPG closed, which was actually a leading category, the leader in the category. But what I love what you said there, Adam, that was really helpful for me, is that you are looking at territory checks as one of your KPIs, and that it's a strong signal. If you're not getting those, you do not have traction with that network. So that means you've got work to do. And yes. I think that's really, really valuable. Instead of just looking at just leads coming in, there's an earlier KPI that's the leading indicator on the rest of the flow that we should be looking at. And so that's a great share. Thank you. Red, do you want to add on to that?
I'm learning as we listen here. I love what Adam said. The KPIs, if they don't get 20% registration to territory check, and for those who don't know, consultants are doing a territory check with the franchisor to make sure the territory is available before they present the brand to their candidate. Territory check is the name of it. Our numbers on that, KPIs, is more in the 10 to 15% range. We're the kings of territory checks. Our consultants love doing them. We've got a very simple territory check tool. So if a Azor's out there and they're not getting 20%, I wouldn't be registrations of the territory checks, I wouldn't be too concerned. But if you're not getting 10%, I would be. Now, how do you take advantage of those territory checks? You respond quickly. Our system actually tracks to the second how fast Azor is responding, and it posts the average on that Azor's profile page, the company page within our system. And so the consultants, as they're looking at brands to present, one of the things they look at is how fast, how responsive is the Azor to territory checks. And I ask every Azor when they're wondering, how are we doing? I say, well, what do you think is good? And I'll hear some say, well, as long as they're within 24 hours. I'll have others say, well, they better be within 2 hours. The average we see is around 7 hours. This is 365 24/7, 7 hours. Now, to me, if it's not 2 hours, there's something wrong, because you're getting a text and an email. And then the second thing to know on territory checks is when you respond, when you, the FranDev rep at Azor, responds to a territory check, don't just say yes. This is a perfect moment to deepen that relationship, get them to know you, get them to like you, get them to trust you. Yes, absolutely. Exclamation point. Thanks so much, John Smith. I look forward to meeting your candidate. Thank you very much. That is a hot market. We are really on fire. We've already done 15 deals with you guys this year. Thanks so much. And then include your name, because that you want to get them to know you. And that name is, of course, part of that. And then, as you heard Mike say, maybe follow up, maybe with a phone call. Hey, how did it go? Did they have questions? What can we do to assist you? And again, you're deepening the relationship, showing you're on top of things, and really making a difference to get on their short list, to get on that list of favorite franchises to present.
That really valuable tips there. And thanks for sharing that, Red. It reminds me that in life, and especially in franchising, trust is kind of won in inches, but it's lost in miles, right? So it is so critical to be responsive, to send the message to the franchise broker that they're important, and that you will treat their leads and their candidates with the same kind of respect that you're treating them. If you don't, and you're taking 2 days to respond, you're sending a clear message that you're just not interested. And I think that was a really important point you made there, Red. Thank you for doing that. Let's jump into the next topic around the investment. Like, what does it cost? And maybe we'll start with you, Red, on this one, and then we'll come to Mike. Okay. What does it cost someone to get going with IFPG? As a franchisor, and what should they expect to spend?
Sure. We there are different groups. IFPG is the largest. We like to say we're the most trusted, but some groups will say it's nothing. but then they require you to come to conferences and pay a lot of money to do this and this and this. So it's really not nothing. It is pretty substantial. So get a clear picture when you're looking at consulting groups to join, to be a part of. You don't want to just join here and join here. You want to be really invested, as the guys on this call are today. A lot of groups don't allow emerging brands. We actually love emerging brands. We want to get them out of that emerging category as fast as possible. And there's some pretty killer brands on that emerging side. And some buyers really want to be part of the emerging brand. They're a little more entrepreneurial and have some influence. So we have packages, to your question about IFPG, that start at $125 a month, all in. No initiation fee. I mean, there's one group that charges $50,000 to join. We charge nothing. It's $125 a month. Our most popular package, kind of right in the middle of the road, is $275 a month, all in. It's, again, just pennies compared to a typical FranDev budget. The guys on this call, and we've got probably our top 10% of Zors are elite members. That elite membership is more in the $1,300 a month. Instead of $275, it's $1,275. And with that, just like other groups, I'm not trying to sell IPG here, but you get a whole lot of stuff. You get more exposure. It's kind of a 10x exposure, and exposure leads to likes and trust, etc., ultimately deals. So part of what you as a Zor want to be doing is, when you get with a group, make sure you're optimizing your membership and truly taking advantage of it. Oh my gosh, 90% of the franchisors that are members with us, despite us informing them, contacting them, emailing them, calling them, they are not taking advantage of their membership, even half of what they're paying for. Things like emails, things like exposure, things like introductions that we're making for them, they're not following up on. So most of us know in life, it ain't hard to be the best. It ain't hard to put your head above others. And it's no different working with the consultants out there. Just do what you're paying for, take advantage of it, deliver, respond quickly, communicate well. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. You're going to do well. I mean,
there's some good life advice there, I think. Thank you. Thanks, Red. Mike, what are your thoughts on the investment you're making typically? I know you're working with IFPG, but just when you look at a broker network, what kind of dollars you put behind that when you make that investment in a network like that?
Not too dissimilar with other networks. IFPG is one, is a huge partner of ours, and we find that to be beneficial. And so we see that across other networks as well. And I think the key there is, as you're building trust and getting to know people, you want to make sure that you're using all the tools that they have available for you. So for us, one of the ways that we do that and make sure that what we're investing into each one of those groups is paying off is we're documenting, and we've got tools that put down what each activity is with each group, when we're going to do it, and then making sure that happens so that we don't forget. I think, Adam, you spoke to that earlier, of how important it is to track that activity so you make sure that it's happening. And so for us, those investments are again, it's been said already, but when you think of how many relationships a broker or consultant might have, we need to remember that when we're investing into that group. You're not doing that just for one opportunity. You're doing that for many opportunities. So and then the following it through from whether it's, territory check to a lead to an opportunity and so forth. The key there is they're watching us too. So we don't want to just give them funds and then expect it all to happen. We take a very assertive stance to make sure that it does, so that we're getting the most out of the opportunity.
Mike, you want to add on that? Sorry, Adam, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, not a ton. I think Red and Mike said it. I would just, my advice to be, if anyone's listening to this and is not currently working with broker groups, but considering it, just both of you guys were saying this, but on the front end of exploring something with a group is just really get a handle on how that group works. Like to Red's point, there's not a big fee to join. There's not a big monthly fee necessarily, but there's more of like a pay to play opportunity with a sliding scale. So a whole bunch of different things you can do. And so then you can budget accordingly and go, what can we afford, not afford? What are we looking to do here? Other groups are different. It's a lot more expensive to join, but they may have predetermined stuff that you have to participate in or that are laid out for you. Okay, does that make sense for you? And so groups are similar in some ways, but they're also run very different. Some are more proactive with us as franchisors, some are less. So the advice would be, just really get a handle on, if you are to join that group, how does it work? Where your dollar is going? Is it on the front end? Is it more spread out throughout the year? Do you have the option of spending more or less if you want to? Do you not? Are you acquired to do things? Are you not required? All those questions are good to have. And all the groups are great to answer them, but the groups are just not the same. They don't all operate the same. And so I think Mike just touched on this. You don't have unlimited money, probably. And so you've got to be strategic about how are you best using your dollars with your time, with your energies. And so just really flush that out in advance, because as Red pointed out, you could be spending, $2,000-$3,000 a year with a group. You could be spending $50,000. It's a big range. So really understand that on the front end.
Maybe while I still have you on this, Adam, what do we, obviously each of these brokers get paid through commission. It's a pay per performance model, right? What are you guys paying in terms of percentage of your franchise fee to brokers?
So with our model, it's not percentage based. And part of that would be, and there's obviously different brands do different things. We don't have like multi-unit sales as well. They're single unit sales. And so typically for us, it's $25,000 for a placement.
Awesome. Mike, you in the same range?
We're a little more than that. I mean, our investment into our organization is a little higher. So we would, we're about 10 grand more than that in a lot of cases.
Okay. And Red, is that kind of, maybe if you want to speak to what you normally see when a broker, because we want to get the attention of the brokers to look at our concept, right? What should a brand be thinking about in terms of paying the broker for that performance?
You got it. I'll hit it on several places. We have $5,000 commissions. We have $50,000 commissions. We have multi-packs that can pay six figures, and that is not that uncommon. So the average investment, let's look at average investment, item 7, tends to be in the $250,000 range, right? Some are 50,000, some are 5 million, but in franchising, average investment around $250,000. Average franchise fee, high 40s, around 50,000. Some sectors, such restaurants, for instance, for some crazy reason are averaging more in the 35,000 range, but average in franchising is close to 50. Next, to your point, average commission. Average commission around 28,000, which easy math, that's around 56% of the franchise fee. There's a lot of factors. Are you a super hot brand that's growing like crazy? Maybe you can pay a little less because people are dying to, they present you and you close it. Maybe you've got 25 competitors all in that same space vying to be in the top 3. You may want to get a little more aggressive. Perhaps your all-in investment is 75, not 250 or 750, but 75, and your franchise fee is only 35. Well, you still want to be, close to 20, 17.5 at the least, at 50%. So there's a lot of variables there. I have one franchise, believe it or not, that's $99.99. The lowest one I've ever seen, less than 10,000, and I'm not talking commission. That's all. That's what the franchise fee is. In their case, they pay, I think it's $2,500. But for the majority, I would say 90% of our franchises, we have close to 500 that we work with. 90% are between 19,000 and 42,000. Probably 95%, 19 to 42. And then you talk multis. Some of them live on multi-packs. And multi-packs, can get pretty serious. So they usually don't pay the same amount for the second and third, but it can be close. So if they pay 30 for one, it might be 20 more for each additional. And after 5, it's 15. There's some variances there depending on how you want to structure it. But we work with you. IFPG Corporate does not see 1 penny of commission. So we're a simple third-party advisor. They pay everything to our consultants. And so we're happy to work with Zors to explain and figure out what the best model is for them.
That's one of the questions I'd had that I think you just, and we talked about a little bit earlier, is as how do you make sure your brand is noticed by a network, right? And so I think you just hit it really well. If you are a brand that's competitive and there's 4 or 5 concepts in that space or vertical in that network, and you're paying the lowest tier commission, clearly you're not going to be as noticed as someone who's paying maybe more than that. So I think that's an important point to make. And I would just probably just, as an advocate to using brokers, make mention of this, that if you're going to do anything, go all the way, right? I think Adam said earlier, you don't want to be timid around making your investment and just not quite committing all the way. So I know for us, when we looked at making investments, we find out what is the most we can spend if we made a commitment to a network, so that we can get at the attention of the brokers so it works, because nothing would be worse than spending $50,000 to join a network and then spending thousands to go to their events and sponsor a few things to come up with zero, right? You want to make that thing return. So go big or go home is how I look at using brokers. So with that, I kind of touched on it a little bit. Maybe we'll go to you, Adam, first, and then you, Mike, after. there's a lot of events, right? Whether it's with IFPG or with other broker networks that you've got to go to get in front of these brokers. How many events are you doing a year? What are you investing each time you do these events? Kind of speak to that a little bit for us.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, 2020 threw a bit of a loop into that, obviously with the in-person. So traditionally, there's each group will have different events in-person based. So very often, most groups have a annual conference that occurs at some point, and then some groups will have regional events. Or IFPG is very good about having kind of events throughout the year that you can participate in, especially as an elite member. And other groups have similar type things. So it's one of those things where like you can be going to a couple events a month, easy if you're in multiple groups and you want to attend everything. So it's going to factor in how much money do you have to spend, where are these events, how long are these events, where are you coming from? So a bit unique to us. I don't think we mentioned this. I'm in Vancouver, BC. So if you don't know where that is, just north of Seattle, but kind of as northwest as you can be. A lot of these events are in the southern US, which is not a bad thing for us. We get out of the cold, but it's pretty far. It's often takes us a day to get there, day to get home. So part of it is the time, part of it's the money, and part of it's, again, where are you going to see your best efforts to attend those events. But yeah, if you're in multiple groups and we're in, let's call it more of a normal year where they're happening in person, you can be doing a couple a month if you really want to. But I will say this and give credit to the different broker groups we work with this year, and IFPG obviously included here. But the pivot to virtual events this year was fantastic. We just saw these broker partners arranging and organizing different types of events that were done virtually, similar to this, and just giving the opportunity to build those relationships face to face, even though it's obviously on video. So that was a great pivot we saw this year.
So, Mike, what do you think? How many events do you guys do in a normal year outside of COVID? How many events are you guys doing a year?
We will see oftentimes 8 to 10 events. We don't go to, I completely agree. Everything that Adam said there was fantastic. Yeah, we could do a couple a month, but we typically will average about one per month with our folks, and the investment's a dramatic variance. And so, for what's involved, but it really, our investment there a lot of times comes down to what kind of effort are we seeing on both sides. So we always go first, right? I believe a lot of times people get into a crazy cycle on investments. They say, well, if they will do this, then I will do that. If they will do this, then like, no, just you do it and then see how it goes. And so we put investment into those things to get started and work on relationships and see how that's moving forward. And we're big on, we really mean it when we say partnership. If we see a high level of commitment to our brand, we're very committed to you as well and very loyal to that. So it doesn't mean that we sponsor, we attend, and we're very involved. So nothing other than that, really nothing to add to what Adam said there. Was terrific.
Red, how many events are you guys hosting on a monthly basis for people to get to know the brokers in your network?
Sure. Depending on how you define event, we do 200 trainings per year, and 150 of those trainings we invite Zors to present. Those are all virtual. So that's always been the case since we started a decade ago. Live events, we've got a huge one each year, 400 plus folks in Hollywood, Florida in October, and that is still on. Pray God, right? And then our elite members, we want them to be able to budget. We don't just throw out events and it's not budgeted. So they're putting money into a pot each month that pays for other events that they can participate in. And we'll fly in consultants from around the country. We pretty much pay for everything for our consultants. It's all about taking care of the Zor. And so I'll have one huge one, 5 regionals, and I've got another half a dozen at least miniature regionals where we don't fly folks in, but anybody in a 2 to 3 hour radius, we get together and we invite all the Zors as well. And so lots of different, from one that's got 7 people to one that's got hundreds. We're doing something every month of the year to because what is our purpose? We're here to connect franchise professionals. Zors are here to meet the consultants. Consultants are here to connect with the Zors. So that's what we do all day long, is connect people in every way possible.
Do you find that these, I mean, Adam, you mentioned that these virtual events have been working well for you. Red, from your perspective, is it working? Are you seeing people still moving franchises to the broker network using virtual as a means, or do you think that we're just losing something by not being in person?
Well, we're certainly losing something by not being in person. We all miss that hug and that beer together in person. But I was blown away. Our virtual event in this past October, we had about, I told my team, I said, guys, 3 days, it was 6 hours, 3 days in a row. So about 20 hours total. I said, that is a crazy long time for a virtual event. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'm not holding my breath on it being a success. I'm an optimist, but in that case, I just didn't see it happening. And I said, maybe 200 at the beginning of day one. The second half of day one, we'll have 100. Day 2, we'll have 50, and day 3, we'll have 20. I mean, who wants to spend 20 hours on a virtual event in 3 days? And yet we had 260 at the beginning of day 1, and we stayed averaging over 200 the entire rest of the 3 days. So virtual events can be real successful. We literally got 80 text calls and emails with high fives about how well it went. So if you're doing them right, you're connecting people. You're getting people in breakout sessions. You're getting people on panels. You're getting Q&A constantly happening. And you can get, man, in some cases, 70, 80% of the value that you would have at a real live session on these virtual sessions. That's awesome. Yeah, I know we've seen, our travel budget's gone down. So in fact, we're actually increasing our budget around our commitment to the broker networks we're working with and increasing the number of networks we're working with to expand our sales. So that's great advice there. We're wrapping up here. We got 5 minutes left. I got one last question, and then we're going to go ahead and turn it to the audience to ask questions. So go ahead on the right-hand side of the YouTube channel. You'll notice a comment section. If you comment on there, that'll come through to us, and we'll pick and choose some of those questions for the panelists to answer. So let's talk about, if you don't mind, Mike and Adam, and Red as well. There is a growing movement among some brands to completely outsource their franchise sales effort to some very professional groups out there that do great work. I'd love to hear, maybe you first, Mike, if you want to speak to it, then Adam, then Red. Speak to why you keep your franchise sales in-home or in-house in the office, and have you considered doing it, outsourcing it? And maybe Red, you can speak to what your experience has been with outsourced agencies. You, Mike, first.
Sure. In our case, there's no way at this point we would do that because, again, we're quite a large investment for folks that want to run really big businesses, and we want to have a very personalized approach by people that know what it is that we're about at a really intimate level. I mean, our folks that are our folks that handle franchise distribution here at Paul Davis come from operational backgrounds inside Paul Davis, and so they know the business very, very well in order to speak to it very specifically as we move forward. We couldn't in our brand get what we need, I don't believe, out of outsourcing. Maybe for an emerging brand, that may be something to consider. For us, this is definitely the route that we're going to continue with.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, and to Mike's point, we've been doing this for 30 years plus with 1-800-GOT-JUNK and with Wow and Day Painting with Shaction. We've never outsourced; it's always been in-house. And I heard different things about what Azor needs to, give up in that relationship. Sometimes part of royalties or part of ownership, different things. I'm sure there's different scenarios. It's never been on the table for us either. Although I've seen it work, but for us, I think this is similar to Mike, that, you hear our CEO, Brian Scudamore, say this often, but culture is king. And when we're talking to people exploring our brands, the fact that they know, if they're talking to me, that I work for the brand. If my paycheck says Wow and Day Painting on it, I'm in the operational meetings, I'm in the marketing meetings. So not only to be able to handle questions they have or information they're looking for, but I've been told this by Candace, there's more of a trust factor that, you work here. Like, you're going to be here in a few years when I've built this business or I'm growing this business. Like, you're going to see ideally the fruits of my labor versus, maybe sell this and then you're selling another brand a year later. So there's a trust factor that comes with that. And that's been a big mentality piece for us as a system. And I would just say, me personally, it's helped me a ton with validation. So the fact that it's been year over year working with our franchisees, going to all the events our franchisees are at, in meetings with them, when I'm asking this network, people that are A players, B players, even C players, to help with validation calls, to spend volunteer time speaking with potential candidates, I believe this has helped me a ton being in-house. When I'm having those conversations, knowing who they are, knowing their business, knowing their life, that we have a huge list of validators that are willing to help that process. And I believe being in-house has helped me with that.
That's the great point there, Adam. And I think, so we've heard now from Mike and Adam on this, and you guys are both running established, as you've mentioned, long-standing brands, been around for a long time. maybe Red, do you want to make the case for maybe an emerging brand? Should they be considering using an outsourced franchise sales team, or what's been your experience?
Sure. So outsourced sales teams, let's call them FSOs, franchise sales organization. When you're a ZOR and you're looking for ways to sell franchises, you can bring somebody in-house, you can have your own employee, but a lot of those emerging ZORs and some of the not so emerging ZORs, they're getting 10 leads a month, 30 leads a month. Can you really have somebody full-time focused on that? And okay, maybe you put somebody part-time on it. They're going to be weak. They're not focused on Fran Dev. So yeah, FSOs can be a dream answer for some folks. Now expect to put a six-figure investment into them. It's not like you're going to save a whole lot of money typically outsourcing it versus bringing a full-timer in-house. But FSOs can be a absolute answer to prayer. Or it can be a nightmare. I mean, some are going to take equity. Some are only going to take commissions on deals. Some are going to require a lot of money up front for marketing. If they're smart, they are going to require a lot of money up front for marketing, or they're going to sit there twiddling their thumbs like you've already been experiencing. So there's a lot of variety in the FSOs. You get a good FSO that has a strong reputation with the consultants, because we're talking reputation, we're talking relationships. If they've got a killer relationship, trust from the consultants, that can be a incredibly good thing. But it's going to be the more expensive FSOs. They're going to expect more in budget. They're going to expect more perhaps in commissions, and it's going to be a long-term deal for you. So it's hard to unwind if you're not succeeding with them. Just know it's a very serious decision. It could be great. If you're a giant brand like these guys, there's no need. You've got a great team in-house. So lots of things to consider when considering an FSO. I'm happy to refer some for you if you want them.
I think that's a really good point there. It's about speed, I think, right? Ultimately, if you're brand new to the business and you have not developed those relationships yet with broker networks or brokers individually, an FSO represents an opportunity to get to that quickly. And I know I've heard of a number of home service concepts that are selling 20 or 30 units a year using FSOs, and some more than that. And there's some larger brands that, like, for example, Service Monster, which just sold recently, I've heard has leveraged FSOs over the past couple of years to grow their brand almost this entire time. So I think there's no shame, I guess, in having a group like that to help you build your brand. But clearly, when you, I think I'd probably lean. I know for myself, we've always had franchise sales internally, and we felt like it's part of the culture to have that internal and be a core competency. If we're in the game of franchising, we needed to master that ourselves, although it did take some time to figure out how to do it properly, for sure. So great. This has been great so far, guys. Thank you so much for your participation up until now. We've got just a couple of questions have come in. So let me go ahead and pull in one from Jen Robinson. One moment. Did that show up on the screen here? Oh, can everyone see that? Can you see that, Red?
Yes,
That's a
sir.
question for you.
Will there be an opportunity in the future to add attachments to replies to territory checks? Ooh, Jen, I like you already. We are always investing in more technology. We've got a complete revamped website front and back coming in the next month and a half, and that is on our list. So thanks for asking that. All the brands have areas where they have a downloads for the consultant. Some are just consultant focused because they might have commission involved. Most are downloads within your company's profile page in our system that the consultant can share with their candidates before introducing them to you to just further confirm this is a brand they're really interested in. But yeah, that's on the way.
Awesome. Thank you, Red, for that answer. And thank you, Jen, for participating in the question. I've got another one here from Zach Nolte. Zach, thanks for joining us here. I'll put up here on the screen here. So do you feel like the candidate process gets convoluted when a broker, FSO, and a ZOR are included? And that's probably really a question for you, Red, more than anything else.
I don't at all. No. If the FSO does a poor job, sure. Most of the time, the candidate is not aware that this is an outsourced group. They are an extension of the ZOR, and the consultant is there to make everything smoother, more comfortable, help the process go faster, educate them beforehand, during, and even after. So the consultant makes everything better. I mean, I'm biased, but I was a ZOR for a very long time, both a founder and a FranDev rep, and even a supplier for a while. So I know the process, I know how it works, and the Consultant, certainly not. Everybody knows they're a separate piece and they're an impartial third-party trusted advisor. The fact that you have an FSO representing the ZOR, no, the ZOR is still going to have the last call, and they may or may not even realize it, even when they speak to the CEO of the ZOR, that the FSO was indeed an FSO and not an in-house group. So when communicated properly, you're not trying to lie, certainly not lying. You're not trying to hide anything, but it shouldn't matter. You want the best people representing your brand. Oftentimes the best people are in-house. Sometimes the best people would be outsourced.
I'd love to just bring up a question that I actually have for myself personally in franchise sales. It's when you're trying to grow a brand, it's really hard to say no to someone that wants to sign an agreement and open a territory. And I got to believe that goes up and becomes more significant when you're dealing with an FSO and a ZOR, because they're all compensated for performance. And I'm sure that's on people's minds. Maybe Mike, how do you say no at all to candidates that come from broker networks? If you do, how do you handle that so that you don't lose the confidence of the broker?
Yeah, great question, Scott. I say no a lot. A few years ago when I first was began approving all of our franchise candidates here at Paul Davis, I was saying no a lot more often. And that typically was really more clarity needed to be given to who the duck was, right? Walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? So we needed to clarify for our networks exactly who our candidates were. And then, but everyone, in a lot of cases, anyone who's got a performance-based structure is going to test the limits of that, right? So someone's going to bring you someone they think is right on the edge, or maybe not quite qualified, but maybe they'll eke through. And the reality is that until someone hears no, a lot of times they don't know that we really mean it when we say this is the quality of candidate that we need, the caliber of candidate we need. So when we heard, I really believe that small conflict and done in a healthy way develops stronger relationships. And in that sense, there's a little bit of conflict, right? Or perceived conflict. And so very quickly, when no is heard once, they'll say, well, why not? And you're going to walk through the reasons why and say, next time, if you could look for this and this, and improve from there. So no actually becomes, I think, a very strong ally to a stronger and better relationship with our brokers.
That's a great way of putting that. Adam, do you guys say no to brokers? How do you handle that? And how do you make sure that you keep their confidence?
Yeah, we do. And I think where Mike just ended, I would say would be my best advice for anybody listening to this that is considering working with brokers, maybe currently is already working with brokers. We have a phrase here we use across all levels of our world called race to conflict. And so for me, what I found to be one of the best relationship builders, one of the most effective tools in terms of strengthening things within brokers and consultants is, if I'm seeing something, even very early in the process with a candidate that is potentially not the right fit or a concern, instead of just putting the blinders on and going, I don't want to make a broker upset, or I don't want them to stop showing me, or maybe it just works itself out, even though in my gut I know it's probably not, or this is a real thing. Instead, write to it. Get on the phone with that broker and consultant and say, hey, this is a concern I have, or hey, this has been happening with your candidate. This is how it's coming across. What do you think? And I would say 98% of brokers, consultants appreciate that. They want to problem solve with you. They want a solution find with you. They want to know that stuff. So they're not maybe surprised at the final mile going, I thought everything was perfect. You told me there was no problems. And now we're at the awarding stage and you're saying no. They want to be involved in that. And sometimes, you're working on something and it gets all the way to the final mile and still doesn't get there. And then you got, 2% of broker consultants that hear any kind of pushback, any kind of no, and they go, well, I'm not showing you then. You guys are difficult. And that's okay. We don't need to work with that person. But for me, it's racing to conflict, have those conversations, exactly what Mike said, great relationship builder. And no can sometimes be the best thing that happens with you and a consultant to then get the yeses after that.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Great advice there. I've got one more question from one of our listeners, Austin James. Here, I'll pull you up. More of a general question, but as we're kind of wrapping up, this is probably a good time to give that final advice. Any advice for someone who is new to franchise development and working with consultants?
Who you asking? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Red. You can go. You go first.
Sure thing. I'm going to hit that previous one too. What the guy said was right on. We tell every ZOR, if you ever see a consultant throwing mud on the wall, sending you every bit of garbage, not qualifying, not educating, not informing, not guiding, we want to know about it. So, and another point is I teach my kids this all the time. One of the hardest things you'll ever do in life is learn to say no. Your life will be a lot better when you do learn to say no. And so if a consultant is sending a candidate that's not a good fit, a critical piece, and hear me here, critical piece of the process, and this also goes to Austin's question, in working between a ZOR and a consultant is the frick and frack. Frick and frack. If you haven't heard that term, you're going to hear it a bunch now. Frick and frack is the backseat relationship. There's three parties. There's the ZOR, the consultant, and the candidate. That once the consultant introduces the candidate to the ZOR, the consultant goes in the back seat in the car analogy. The ZOR's leading it. The ZOR's driving it. They're going back and forth. They're having every bit of their discovery process. Not a single step is skipped. The consultant does not replace a step, and the consultant does not replace the FranDev rep. The consultant is a lead source of incredibly great leads. And then the frickin' frack is behind the scenes. Nothing hidden about this. The consultant is checking in with the candidate. How did the first call go? I presented 3 brands. Okay, we've got Paul Davis on here. He's number 2 out of 3. Why is Paul Davis number 2 out of 3? Okay. You're concerned about this and this, but you really like that and that. Awesome. All right. When's your next call? Getting the info. And then he checks in with Mike. Mike, how did the call go with John Smith? Well, really? You like John, but his spouse didn't get on. Oh man, I'll make sure the spouse gets on there. You gave him some homework. When's it due? Okay. When's your next call? All right. I'll make sure. Hey, by the way, Mike, he said he heard your dog barking in the background. Let's try to chill the dog. Okay. So it's that 3-way back and forth, guiding, finessing the process. You close deals faster with consultants. You get a better ultimate candidate that becomes a better Z because they can follow a system. They're open to advice. And what is a consultant doing? Advising. What is a ZOR doing? Advising, guiding, and training. So lots of reasons to work with consultants. Don't mean to go on that topic, but to Austin's question, how do you work better? You communicate in every way that we've shared over this last hour.
Great advice. Thank you. Thank you, Red. Mike or Adam, you want to add on to that?
I would say 2 things as well. I think that to add on to that is, one, be careful how broad you throw your net at first, right? Because we know that, if we're using sort of a shotgun approach, I would say use a rifled approach. So pick a few or maybe 10 consultants that you were going to work very deeply with, so they know you very well. If you're just, as Red was just saying, if you're throwing it all against the wall and you're looking for the right candidate, that can be a challenge. The other thing that I would say too, and it was already talked about earlier, one of the things that I talk about a lot is what gets celebrated gets accelerated. So when good things happen in that frickin' frack, that's great. You need to do the virtual or phone high fives as you go to make sure you keep energy going along the process with anyone that you're working with, especially when you're newer to the game, so that they know where you're at in the process and you know where they're at in the process.
Hey, you know what? I'll add on that rifle. I love that analogy. We live in an analogy world with franchise development. The rifle is a bit of chicken and the egg in that when I was looking for someone to date and marry, boy, I picked one out and I rifled her about 83 times. She still didn't fall, so you get a little nibble on your fishing hook. That's the fish you're going to go after and go deep with them. Sometimes in our world, what I'm talking about is we got the consultants that everybody knows and is making $1 million, and I'm going after him. Well, guess what? He may not want you to go after him or her. She may already have 3 in the junk removal space or the whatever space you're in. So, you can try to go after some of the big fish, but ultimately, when you get some nibbles from some folks, that's the folks you want to go deep with.
Great point. Adam, you want to finish us off?
Sure. I think these guys covered a lot. We've said it 100 times on here, but relationships for me, for Austin, to answer your question, be considering that, that's what you're building with these broker consultants, and just think about other areas of your life when you look at good relationship building, and it's doing what you say you're going to do, and it's having trust with each other, and it's communicating well, and And so it's all those things that both Mike and Red said. That would be my biggest advice. I think, when you're new to the broker side as well, there can be, you may feel intimidated to go, oh, well, there's all these other franchise development people that have been working with brokers for years and years and years. And how do I possibly get into that? Or how do I possibly crack into that nut and get them to pay attention to me? And I think it's just be very, very clear on your brand. What are you guys all about? Why is it attractive to their candidates? Because that's what a broker and a consultant's trying to do, is find the best fit for their candidate. So if you are clear on that and you can make that clear to them, you can jump right in and build a relationship, even if they've worked with other people for 5-10 years. If you're not clear on that, or you're a little muddy, then they're not going to trust you. They're not going to have that confidence to present you. So just make sure you're crystal clear on what you want them to know, how you want to present them, and who is the right person. So when they find them, you come to mind.
Hey, Scott, when you put this together, to put this in perspective for the folks listening, you said, Red, you work with hundreds of ZORs. Who are the best? Who know how to work with consultants, who are in it and serious at it, and real professionals? You said grab the best, a couple that you think are second to none. And that's where we got Mike and Adam. So I appreciate them jumping on here today, and certainly you for facilitating this great webinar.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Guys, all of you, Adam,
you, guys.
Mike, Red, you've been phenomenal. I know that we've got some great advice here for everyone and great discussion. So thank you for all signing in. And I'll just sign off with just a reminder. Our Home Service Summit is next month, February 4th and 5th. You can go to it through homeservicessummit.com. And we'll be sending out a survey to all of our listeners to get some feedback on how this went. And I'll share it with you for attending. So thank you again, guys. Great to see you all. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.